I think it's probably true to say that every man out there wants to be more likable. But nowadays, with the isolation that technology and social distancing has placed us in, it's becoming more and more rare for guys to go out into actual face-to-face social interactions where you can learn the skills to be personable and likable. And yes, being personable and likable is something that can be learned. It's not just some natural instinct that people have. You have probably noticed in your own life that certain interactions you have with a person can be altered both positively or negatively based on a few things. Some of these things include the word choice that you use, the way you say those words, your attitude, as well as your body language. And so today we want to give you 5 awesome tips that you can do right now to become more likable and personable in social situations. So let's jump right into the first tip. So the first tip I've got for all you guys out there today to become more likable and personable in any social situation is to remember and use people's names. People like to feel remembered and respected. And there's no better way to do that than to use someone's name naturally throughout your conversation with them. That proves to them that they are worth remembering and that they have made an impact on you. Have you ever met someone briefly, even for a very small amount of time, and then the next time you did meet them, no matter how long it's been since you last talked to them, they've remembered your name? How did that make you feel? It probably made you feel awesome. Because what that did was it communicates to you that you are someone worth remembering to that person. And that person then becomes much more likable in your eyes. It's important that when you do this trick, when you use someone's name naturally in a conversation, you don't overdo it. Otherwise then it becomes forced and almost inorganic. Now when it comes to actually remembering people's names, I have been guilty of this before. It is really difficult for me to remember people's names right off the bat. So what you have to do is you have to remember the name for at least the entirety of the conversation, and immediately afterwards repeat the name to yourself over and over and over again until you can lock it in. Your brain likes to remember things that are repeated because the things that you repeat to yourself tend to come across as more important, which is why repetition is so important for memorization. Tip number 2 I have for you to be a more likable and personable guy out there is to ask questions about others more than you talk about yourself. Now, the person who does this, the person who asks questions, is the guy everyone wants to be around because they display an open interest in other people. They almost display a selflessness in themselves and more of an organic interest in the people around them that makes people flock to them. People do like to talk about themselves. So when you're not willing to do that, when you're not willing as much to talk about yourself, but instead are more interested in actively listening to other people, people love that. If you were on a date, okay, and your date, let's say, never asked you any questions about yourself, but just kept going on and on, answering the questions you asked, how would that make you feel? It would probably make you feel unheard, maybe uncared for, like they were not even interested in the first place in you as a person. And when people want to feel cared for, they want others to show an organic interest in them, which means asking more questions. I'm not saying you don't have to have an opinion, and you can definitely express that opinion between your questions so that you can convey that you have your own thoughts, your own ideas and values. And it helps break apart your questions a little bit and helps you avoid coming across as an interrogator. Overall, make sure that the questions you ask far outweigh the answers or the little factoids you give about yourself. Number 3 for being a more likable person is to be less judgmental. The number 1 way to turn people away from you is to judge them. So although you are entitled to your opinion, you must also then recognize that everyone else around you is entitled to their own opinion, and that yours is probably no more right or wrong than theirs. This is just called being open-minded. When you ask someone a question and then you immediately belittle them by making them feel wrong or trying to disprove them, what you're doing is displaying a sense of self-righteousness and ego that is immediately unattractive. People enjoy others who are easygoing, confident, and open-minded. That gets people comfortable with you because they feel like they can open up and be themselves around you. And just ask yourself, would you rather be in the company of a person who always puts you down for your opinion, or someone who accepts you exactly the way you are and doesn't try and change your mind about everything? Probably the latter. Okay, number 4 is all about body language. We're talking about mirroring a person's actions when you're speaking to them. Body language is effective attractive. There's no doubt about it. And in fact, expert communicators and negotiators out there say that body language is more important than verbal language. Mirroring someone's body language is all about displaying a shared empathy and connection between you and that person. And when someone feels like they're being heard and that you have empathy towards them, trust develops between you two. On the opposite side of the spectrum is someone who closes off their body language and feels unapproachable, unconfident, and generally overall unattractive. Keeping your body language open means pulling your shoulders back a little bit, putting your hands wide out, and keeping your head up as if to say you were confident and you're willing to talk to people. Those are just some tips on body language in general. But by mirroring a person's body language, let's say they do this if they're thinking, and you start doing something like that too, what you are doing is showing them that you are connected somehow. Even if you're not thinking about the same thing, you're both being pensive. And by doing that, you're showing them that you are taking them into consideration and you are giving them actual true attention. And this immediately increases the trust and the likability you have in any social situation, including things like job interviews, dates, whatever it is. All right, and tip number 5, and arguably the most important, is to be unapologetically you. Now, the reason this tip is kind of controversial is because you may be wondering, why would I be giving you tips and telling you to do these things if you wouldn't naturally do them? And then I'm telling you to just kind of be yourself. Well, I'm not just telling you to be yourself. What I'm telling you to do is be unapologetically yourself. Being unapologetic about who you are is less about being yourself and more about being confident with yourself. Because then what you're doing is living without shame. You are more willing to be vulnerable with the people around you, which immediately makes you more likable, because then you become relatable and people don't see you as some kind of Superman or some kind of being who can't be touched or can't ever be wrong. You come across as much more genuine and honest when you're willing to be vulnerable with other people and live without shame, because you're not trying to prove anything to others or to yourself. Think about it this way. The guy who reacts negatively when people don't agree with everything he says has the largest and ironically the most fragile ego. This guy feels the need for everyone to think exactly the way he does because he can't stand to live in a world where people have different opinions. He must always be right, he must always be unchallenged, and he must always be the most dominant person ever. He won't admit when he is wrong, he will never say sorry, and he will be the first to judge and try and disprove others, even when it's an opinion that can't be proven. And most importantly, he is always disliked by people around him. On the other hand is the guy who is unapologetically himself. He's got his emotions under control, not because he doesn't have emotions, but because he knows that despite what anyone else thinks about him, he can get through it, he can be okay, and he can live on perfectly fine and happy with his life without needing to change anyone's opinion. He displays comfort to others around him because he's open-minded and genuine. And because of all these traits, he finds that he connects with people so much more easily, because all people enjoy the company of a confident and open-minded person, someone who accepts them and makes them feel comfortable with who they are because he is comfortable with who he is. So overall, being likable is not a one-step journey, and oftentimes these steps are connected. For example, being unapologetically you often makes you more likable in many different ways, including confidence, your willingness to match people's body language because you're actively listening, and much, much more. And overall, the best tip I can give you is to practice things that can help you drop your ego and make you feel more confident and comfortable with who you are in the first place. Practice being a little vulnerable, and then you'll find out that despite whatever interaction you just had, you're still alive, you're still okay. So overall, I hope you guys enjoyed these 5 tips. My name is Austin from Life Proof Grooming. If you like this video, please hit like and subscribe. Smash that bell icon so you'll be notified every time we post another really cool video out there. We're posting tons of them. And if there's something you think I missed, then leave it down in the comments section. We would love to get back to you on that and see what your ideas are, see if there's anything that we can include in maybe another video. And just thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you in the next one.